Hello brothers and sisters, I'm Billy Wilkerson. I was injured in a motorcycle accident July 19th, 2010. I was life flighted to Gainesville, Florida with some pretty serious injuries. One of the injuries among many was a couple of brain bleeds. I had some memory loss, I had some concentration problems, functioning of my thinking and processes. I lost a lot of memories for a while, but they started to return. Some of my mental functions are still a little slow. I stutter some once in a while. I was troubled by this, but God gave me the understanding not to worry, that the letter of the law kills, but the spirit or understanding and truth gives life. A wiping of the memory banks, if you will, and a partial reloading. During this time period, I received considerable revelations, some interpretations of dreams and signs. I was given a warning before that, and then a month later they started showing up where I could understand them. And not too much on visions yet. That's probably enough on me. Jesus Christ is my Lord, Savior. What I want to do is give a revelation on Daniel 8 and the identity of the little horn in Daniel 8:9. The identity of this little horn is Jadis, the Jewish high priest in Jerusalem. Well, I know I'm going to receive some funny looks about this, and jaw dropping and some thoughts about this, but I'm going to start to explain it and how it breaks down. In Proverbs 25:2 is the glory of God to conceal a thing, and the honor of kings is to search out a matter. And God does conceal some things, some of it so that we have to step out on faith so that we can receive it or understand it. Kings to search it out. I thought, well, I'm not a king, but then I got to thinking, if he gives you a crown of wisdom or knowledge, he is King of Kings, and didn't necessarily say King of the earth's kings. In Daniel 8:9, the concealment here does not trace directly from the full horns, but it traces from the interaction between the priest and the notable horn on the he-goat, which we know to be Greece, which in fact is the reason that the priest had the little horn. I'll explain some more. 333 BC, in operations against Tyre, Alexander sent emissaries to Jerusalem requesting tribute, supplies, and volunteers. He had to build a causeway out there, and at the end of the assault he did use some ships. Kind of tough nut for him to crack. This was after defeating a Medo-Persian army at Isis. What Alexander wanted to do is eliminate the ports that the Medo-Persian fleet could operate from, so he wouldn't have anyone behind him when he went to deal with the remainder of the empire. So Tyre was part of that operation to eliminate those ports. And like I said, and he had sent those emissaries asking for those supplies, volunteers, tribute, whatever. And the Jewish priest declined him, said as long as Darius was alive and the throne was active in that empire, they were going to fulfill their obligation, their promise. But the priest at that time hedged his bet, because he had fragments or some of the prophets' little books that they had, scrolls, proper word. And he knew of Daniel 8 and that this was most likely the king of Greece that would be anointed by God to judge this empire. And so while he was thinking about this, he came up with a course of action in his head that year. Christ said, if you thought it in your heart, you've already done it. What he basically did to plan this is he used the imagination of his own heart, which is goes into a little bit in Jeremiah. After Alexander completes the conquest of Tyre, he marches on to Gaza and conquers it with the Egyptians, Philistines, the mixture of people, whoever they were at the time, Cherarites, your guess, as good as mine. Then he moved on to Jerusalem. He was met outside the gate by the high priest and his entourage in their full regalia, their full uniforms, priestly robes. When he seen the high priest, he recognized someone he thought he seen in a dream in Greece, where the Persian Empire was going to be given over to him. He told his officers that he had paid tribute gestures to the God of these people and their religion. He was taken inside, supposedly from what I read, into the temple, and he was allowed to make a sacrifice there. This runs completely against what's given in Ezekiel 44:7. As a matter of fact, it says if you take the uncircumcised in heart into the temple, that violates the covenant. Also, God informed me that the little horn, the horn in this case, if it would have been a successor to the leader of the Seleucid Empire, it would be a horn of equal size. This little horn was a transgressor of the agreement God had with them, or the covenant, and it was a interaction between the he-goat with the one horn and this priest, which was in effect acting as leader of the nation over Judah, Benjamin, and the Levites. And like I said, that occurred in that imagination, that thought, that understanding his heart occurred in 333 BC. Being shown the prophecy, Alexander, and feeling generous, he asked them what he could do for him, and they asked that they be allowed to continue to worship the Father in the manner they had done before. And he also gave them tribute free, allowed them to be tribute free. This is really important. What that does is trace it from some of the earliest democracies right on to the latter time, is what we call the 501(c)(3)s. And this is covered in Matthew 17, where the Jews ask Peter if his master pays tribute, and he told him that he does, and Christ told him to catch a fish, take the coin out of his mouth, and pay the tax. But Christ asked Peter, who pays tribute? Is it the children or foreigners? And Peter said, foreigners. Well, then Christ said, well, then are the children free? And since they will control some of the things said from the pulpit or the front of the church, they have some effect, they have some kind of power over this, and they do. The more there's a succession of events after this transgression of desolation, and I'll get to Antiochus the fourth Epiphanies pretty quick. These succession of events leads you further. The more you act upon it, and the further you get into your imagination, the further you get away from the truth of God. Some of it's very similar because it's a lie and it's a deceit to lead you to believe that it's the same. Beware of those who can kill the body and the spirit and the soul. Those who you got to watch out. Primarily, that's religions. This priest, acting as leader of the nation and as the high priest, was in effect what a little horn would be. The two main horns that were, of the four horns of the Alexander's empire, the two main ones were the Seleucid Empire and the Ptolemies in Egypt. At the time of Antiochus IV, the Seleucids had the upper hand and had marched into Egypt. But at this time, the Roman Empire was becoming quite strong, and they had a Roman governor there, or whatever their term for it is. I forgot. I'll remember later. But drew a circle around him and told him that before he steps out the circle, give him a decision on whether or not he's going to prosecute this war against Egypt, the Ptolemies. And so Antiochus IV, he returned towards his home, but at the time he was in Egypt, the Jews had risen up against him in a revolt behind him, and he was determined to really put a hard stomping on them. He lots of atrocities. Slaughtered a pig on the altar, and supposedly, and it probably true, built a statue of Zeus on the inside the temple. So he effectively at that time stopped the daily sacrifice by that action, because he still controlled it and they couldn't cleanse the temple and things like that. In 810, said he waxed great host of heaven, cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. God's ways and thoughts are not our ways and thoughts, and we have to understand some of the wording and everything. And to take some of the host of heaven down with the stars and the planets, the heavenly bodies that they could see at night, casting them down or putting them under your foot is putting them under your understanding and naming them. And naturally they named them Greek gods of mythology at the time. So in essence, they were putting, since we still teach our children these same names, we were putting ourselves in a heathen temple throughout the ages, and them being over us in the dark night sky. Christ covered this where he said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. However, some of the seals are being cut and some of this truth is coming out. We need to understand it, particularly with these 501(c)(3)s in this tax freedom or tribute free. In 811, he magnified himself to the prince of the host. By him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and this does have that to do with it. Antiochus IV, and what I talked about, the events, the succession of them, and as they grew increasingly against the covenant and against the people and against the people, well, the people of the covenant. I believe it was in 167 BC, and by the reason of the transgression by the priest initially, and the contributing factors that were occurring, this was continuing. The other thing, a host was given against this transgression. The host were the Sadducees and the Pharisees, groups of Jews that were inclined to believe, act the way in which the Greeks did. They were more about giving speeches and being eloquent before others and showing himself before others as orators, where they could get up in front of people and speak. And the more they used this, the more they participated in it, the further from the truth. They had some truth, but not in the fullness, and they had driven away from it, basically moved away from it. In 13, the former saint, basically I believe, is talking to a latter saint and asking about the sanctuary and the host trodden it underfoot. Then 814, the time limit of the transgression of desolation is 2,300 years. So you go to year 333 BC, and you go to 1967 when the Jews recaptured it. That is exactly 2,300 years. Then the sanctuary will be cleansed. We'll ruffle some more feathers here, because much is the same way as Christ cleansed the temple before, he's going to start cleansing the temple again. 1967 being a Jubilee year, where the Jews recaptured Jerusalem and had a chance for things to be returned and to set things straight. they adopted basically the abomination of desolation. But that's another teaching. I'll go on with that in another teaching. The former part of it, transgression of desolation. In 8:16, Gabriel was told by Michael to make this man understand. The reason was that Michael had been wrestling with Daniel, the prince of Persia, yes, wrestling with him. Had the same kind of power as Jacob, which wrestled with the angel of the Lord. Michael, wrestling with him, called on help. Gabriel showed up, and while Michael was holding him, he told Gabriel to teach this man, to give this man understanding, and they were going to give him skill. Daniel fasted for 21 days. That's the exact amount of time that Michael fought with the prince of Persia, that he was held up. He told him, I was on the way as soon as you asked, but Daniel held it up, thought he could do it through his own works. And it's not surprising that most favorite believers, and Daniel even admitted that they had confusion. He had confusion of face, him and his fellow Jews. In 8:18, he's talking about deep sleep relates to men being in ignorance. Christ told the apostles asked them 3 times about waking up, and told them, then said something about they couldn't pray with him for 1 hour, and told them to sleep on. In 8:19, talking about the last end of the indignation, which leads actually into the consummation. That's where it's headed. 8:23 refers to the latter kingdom of principality of dominion. God stands them up to be judged. To be stood up, you're going to have, it's like a judge standing up a defendant before he reads him what he's guilty of, and then reads the action that the court's taken against him through the system. Part of standing up means they exert influence. The 7 heads, the 10 horns are exerting a simultaneous influence. You can see the one for the king of Assyria in Isaiah 10. It's going on right now. 7-head beast, which is the 8th. The 8th is active also, and the 10 horns. In this latter part, the king of fierce countenance will stand up, and his own government will find it hard to restrain or stop him. Yeah, he's subtly evil, and that is hard to counter until judgment has run its course. He's a habitual liar. 8:24, others are restrained against him due to the principality on high. It's an evil principality, covers a lot of men, their sway, their talk, offers peace, but his course leads to destruction at home and extends to the Jews and to Jerusalem. His mannerisms deceive many, almost to the elect. He has a charisma about him that makes it easy for him to lie. 8:25, he has a base that is loyal to him, partly for lust of power, and the remainder for gifts, what he can give. 8:26 is the former and latter again. And 8:27 refers to Daniel's fatigue. He's wore out. It's tough to fight 2 angels. Okay, thank you. I'll try to get this on YouTube. Haven't done it yet, but I'm going to learn how to do that, and then maybe I can come with some more teachings. Thank you, brothers and sisters, and that should stir up a little bit of a hornet's nest amongst some people. Love you, and may Jesus Christ protect us.